at this time, we'll open the Carver Finance Committee meeting for the 13th of June at 7 o'clock. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Be seated. Tonight's meeting is recorded on Area 58, and there's nobody here for the public. We have reorganization, but we're waiting for one more member. So we'll take Mr. Malinowski. You want to give us an update on what you had given us earlier?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. You have two updated documents in front of you. The first I'm going to talk to is this one-pager, which is the chart of cost of living and step increases. So this was updated from the last time I had given this to you because we have closed negotiations on two more unions. The first is clerical and the second is police. And we also did a slight recalculation on one of the teachers' contract components, and I'll explain that in a second. So again, the box on the left is what the cost of living increases are. The box on the right is what the cost of living increases are plus steps that people receive, assuming they still are eligible for steps. Steps range from anywhere from 10 to 15 years. There's eligibility for steps. So generally, most people have steps. So on the clerical contract for FY 20, 21, and 22, those are the 3 years we just negotiated, and we negotiated that for a 0%, a 2, and a 2. So that's the COLA for clerical. Moving over 4 columns for police, that is now a 1.5, 2, and 2 is what was negotiated for the police. There was an adjustment in the, I think it was the last year for the teachers for the 2.5%. So that was just modified from the previous document that we had given you. So again, that drives the boxes on the right. So you know, when you look at this, I think the takeaways are for clerical, operation and management, operation and maintenance, dispatch, and police. Those have all ranged with a COLA of 1.2 to 1.4% over the last 14 to 16 years. When you add in the steps to people, going to the box on the right, that goes from 3.1 to 4.4%, again, depending upon what bargaining unit we're talking about. When we go to the teachers column, their COLAs come in at the highest of all the groups in town at 1.8% for COLAs. There have been 2 years where they did receive 0 back in FY 12 and 13. And then when you add in their steps, they range from 6.8 to 14.3% is their annual salary increase per year. And then finally, when you get to non-union, for the last 3 years, which was the first 3 years in 10 years, the non-union received a 2% increase for COLA, and that puts them down at a 0.07%. And then with their steps, that puts them to 2.3%. So again, this document is done just to show comparisons between the different bargaining groups, and it tries to explain what assumptions are put in there. You know, this applies to the majority of each one of these bargaining groups. There are certain issues within each bargaining group that may throw things out of kilter for a few people, but this is, you know, in essence, you know, overall what each bargaining group gets or has gotten. And it shows a trend. It just shows the history of what's happened. So we have that for comparison. So we've been keeping that for about 5 years just to show what has happened and get rid of some of the urban legends that people sometimes find themselves responding to. Any questions on the chart for cost of living?
I thought the new teacher's contract was 1, 1.5, and 2%, and then the final phase of that contract was 2.5. Am I wrong?
The way the thing worked out now is 1, 1.5, 2, and 2.5. They get an extra 2.5 at the end of the final piece.
So the 1 is really for fiscal 19?
Correct. Yep. This is what I got from Brad.
So for FY '20, it's a 1.5% increase, only for step 11?
For step 11, but keep in mind, step 11 is the majority of the teacher
Right,
population.
better than
That's why it's
2/3
more
of
than
the,
half
of the
that.
teachers.
Yeah, it's more than 2/3.
And then it's 2, then it goes to...
Nobody below that actually got a COLA, which was kind of an odd thing for a bargaining group. They gave it to all the senior people, but all the younger people got nothing, except for their step.
Right, and it was 1.5, and 2 is how I understood it, and then the final phase of that was everybody got a 2.5 in the third and final year.
The last day of the third and final year, which starts off the next year.
I got you. Good gig.
And that's why we count the last day as the start of the next year, because that's what carries that forward. So that's why it's pushed off into the FY '22. All right, next document you have is our financial management policies. On the second page, these were updated at the last Board of Selectmen's meeting. And I want to call your attention to the middle of the page, which is section 3F. And basically, just to go back to the first page, section 3 starts off with ongoing operating costs will be funded by ongoing operating revenue. This protects the town from fluctuating service levels and avoids concerns with one-time revenue if they're removed. So section F talks about our tax agreements for personal property, in essence, solar farms or battery storage facilities. And it goes on to say is they depreciate over time, are considered one-time source of funding as they are not reoccurring, given they have a defined termination date per their agreement. So let me focus on that first sentence. Battery storage is a personal property. It goes into the personal property category under commercial, industrial, it's CIP, commercial, industrial, and personal property in our tax levy, and then we have residential. I think what Steve Pratt's going to talk about is that our commercial tax is higher than everything else at 1.4%, so that increases that number going up. But what's important is that when something is added to the levy, it's in the levy in perpetuity. That value's in the levy. Doesn't matter whether or not the expense is there, or the supporting documentation, or the supporting real estate, or the supporting personal property. Once you add that to the levy as new growth, that becomes your levy number. Again, it doesn't matter anymore what was in that number. It's from that point going forward. From that point going forward, that levy number can only go up 2.5%. plus the additional new growth that you get for that year. I always call that 0.03%, so figure taxes go up 2.8% per year on average. And that's town-wide, depending upon where you live in town, they could go up or down more if you have waterfront property or not waterfront property. So that goes up 2.8% every year. With real estate, is that when you have a house, you're paying taxes every year and the house appreciates on a general piece, and that happens and happens and happens and happens. When you have personal property, it depreciates, because you do that under income tax, and our CPAs and everybody can explain this a hell of a lot better than I, but if you're on a 7-year depreciation, you may pay, $70 the first year, 60, 50, 40, 10, and then the last year you're paying nothing. But that 70 goes up 2.5% every year, so you're at $92 when it's down to zero. So you got $92 that somebody else has to pay for, that personal property is no longer paying for. What that does is that where I use my 2.8% for tax things, so somebody's got to make up that delta. So let's go back to my numbers. Prop 2.5 goes up 2.5% plus new growth 0.03%, and the makeup. Call that 0.01. So now we're up to 2.9%, and again, these are order of magnitude numbers, because somebody's got to make up that delta when the depreciation no longer occurs. And that's what happens when it's put into the tax base. Now, generally, when we're dealing with personal property, is that something else comes online and you still have that delta, but then you keep on adding personal property. It's usually not a huge number. But with some of these solar projects that we're going to be adding into, we're going to be collecting a lot of money. And that's a good thing, on one hand, except when you have the delta at the end when somebody stops paying for it. So that's what this was really designed about. So using that concept, now let me go to the second half of the sentence, is that, oh, before I do that, so if that gets embedded into, and let's say we do well and we have a couple big solar projects in one particular year and that all comes online and we get an extra $200,000. Great. Let's go out and hire 3 cops and 2 teachers or whatever the thing is. Well, that's nice, for that year. But then the next year, if you don't have the $200,000, even though you still have that built into the tax base, you've made a quick jump in your staffing group that then sometimes expects another group the next year, and that money's no longer there, and that's where you run into problems. So what we're trying to do is say, okay, from a policy standpoint, we know we need to put some more money into the operation base. But if we put it all into the operational base for a depreciated number that goes away, when we hit that cliff, and that number means all of a sudden the taxpayers have to make up $1 million in X number of years, then there's going to be a huge tax increase for that year because that number has to be met up. Or the town can do what's called an underride, is when that payment ends, you say, okay, we no longer need that money because we haven't built it into the operational base. And it would be irresponsible of myself, Meg, or the Board of Selectmen to just push that off to a future boards and say, well, you guys deal with it in 10 years or 20 years. we kept the money, we used the money, now you got to pay the piper, and your taxes go up 8% that year. So the structure of this is to kind of establish one-time uses so that in those years when it stops, the future boards will have a choice that they can do an underride and say, okay, great, that money's no longer available, we're not going to use that. It could also mean that some of these facilities get repowered up, and that could continue, but we don't know. So this is really giving the future policy boards a choice as to what to make, and we're setting up the structure to allow that to happen. So, back to the second sentence. And so funding from these tax agreements will be equally divided into 3 categories. The first category, so if we get $30,000, $10,000 will go into unfunded liabilities, pension and OPEB pieces. That's got to be paid for. And if we don't set aside money for it, it comes out of operating money. So this is a cost avoidance by taking this one-time money and putting it in here means we tap less into future operation money because we're putting it aside for that. So that's the first category. The second category is, hey, in 20 years, or maybe 25 if we're lucky, but somewhere between 20 and 25, we're going to have to build a new middle high school. And guess what? It's not going to be $48 million. Today, it would be, $100 and some million, easy, for that type of a structure. Probably more than that. So,
If I can interrupt, also to think about too, is that Old Colony will most likely be coming to the towns in the next few years for building.
for additional money, yep. So, there's another issue to be aware of, and thank you for bringing that up. It's again, not built into here, but
Something
obviously
to
this is
keep in
about
mind.
giving us flexibility, so it could address that. So, we know this expense is coming. Now, when we go out to bond, people say, why don't you pay off the bonds earlier? Well, when you establish a bond, you have a certain payment schedule you have to pay those bonds, and sometimes you can prepay portions of those, but generally you can't, and it doesn't really help solve a whole bunch of stuff. So it's better to set up this sinking fund for a known major, huge capital expense that's coming down the road. And then we put that money into savings, and the other thing too is when we have that money in savings, it allows us to actually borrow from our savings. So sometimes instead of borrowing from the bank, we can borrow from ourselves. We have to pay it back in the state law. The state law allows us to borrow money from our stabilization account as long as we pay it back at the end of the year. So we can use our own bank versus going out for external funds. And that sometimes can save us money depending upon how we're working with cash flow. So that's the second option, or second bucket. And the third bucket is that is to offset operational funding going into our capital and debt stabilization. So we've gone through our whole capital plan, and it's about $3 million that goes into that annually. That is funded out of the operation budget that's been progressively built up over time. And in essence, what this would do, again, if you're using the $10,000 number, and I plan on getting a lot more than that, by the way, but for easy math, that's why I'm using the 10,000, is that we would use that 10,000 as part of the pilot to go into the capital and debt stabilization fund, and thereby that $10,000 would then not have to come out of the operation fund, and will be able to stay in the operation fund to be used for operations. And that way, it's equally shared through long-term needs, unfunded liability, and putting some of it back indirectly into the operation base to cover some new things that need to happen into the town, whether it's on the school side or on the town side or on the police or on operation and maintenance. I've all gone through the story, everybody knows how many part-time people we have in the town and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, I don't need to make that case, but we all know we need to grow the revenue a little bit more. We've done a lot, and maybe there's some more we can do for cutting costs, but, we've done a lot of cutting and a lot of restructuring. We've got that low-hanging fruit, so. In any case, that is how we're gonna be looking at these tax agreements going forward, and that's the philosophy behind that. And so as we get into our next year's forecast and kind of what you guys are doing, town-wide, that's just another component to look at that we kind of just wanted to set that up before these funds start to get programmed.
I have a question. This might be a Steve question, but what happens to the solar panel if it breaks, we have to retire it, it's destroyed? Do they just?
So right now, what we're finding is solar panels that were built 5 years ago are about 30 to 40% more energy efficient right now.
Mm-hmm.
They figured out how to tweak the sausage and make them a little bit better. And the reason why I'm starting there is that, when a panel goes down, there's remote sensors on all these things so they can figure out where it is. And they send out a team and they come in and they look at it, and it could be, a loose wire, or it could be it's broken. If it's broken, they yank it out and they replace it with another one. And, I think what we're kind of seeing too is that, in 20 years, they're going to have the infrastructure in place with the wiring connected to the grid. That particular piece is going to be what slows solar down in Carver, is how much transmission lines do we have, both on the New England grid that sends everything to New England, and then on our local grids, which goes up and down Route 58. And that's going to be the capacity driver, not land. It's going to be how big our infrastructure, our pipes are to send electricity out. And that's why you're starting to see the battery piece, that all of our new solar projects have battery storage on them, so that they can, when the grids get, if you will, hot, and they're reaching their capacity, the red line, the power can be stored. When the grids get cooler and they can handle more power, then it sends it back on. So.
I guess maybe that's awesome, but I think what I'm
I
wondering.
didn't answer your question at all, did I?
That wasn't what she was asking.
That was an awesome discussion, but that wasn't what I asked. All right.
No, I guess what I mean is, so say the panel's just 3 years in, no good anymore, they can't use it, so they're not, do they still have to pay the taxes for the 7 years?
Yes. These panels
Or-
are designed to last 25 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know
panels are-
if they could just say section 179, this is gone, done, and
No,
then.
they just come in
Are
and
we out?
replace it.
Okay,
The bigger cost of putting some of these things up is making the interconnect agreement, the pipeline.
Okay.
Panels right now are just, commodities. They can just come in and swap them out. A guy can move them out, and two people can move them out in 20 minutes.
okay.
Yeah, and occasionally a bird will fly into them or something stupid will happen.
Yeah, well,
And
that's what I'm
they come in and
thinking.
replace it, and they have it such so just that one goes down. It used to be a whole line would go down, now I think it's just the one goes down and they replace it.
Okay,
So yes, we continue to receive our tax money.
perfect. That's what I'm wondering. I don't know if they were just out, if it's done, that asset's gone,
Yep.
what happened?
And that's tax money on top of whatever the real estate was worth before they put the solar project back on it, because that continues in perpetuity.
And that's an agreement that's negotiated, right? Or is that's not personal property tax? That's the deal that's negotiated before it starts?
Our policy for Carver is you can just tax them individually, or you can negotiate an agreement. I will tell you, the agreements that I've negotiated are the highest in the state, and part of it is because, it's, in any negotiations, it's leverage. We have some good leverage being where we are in our permitting process. And the other piece is understanding that these are all funded with Wall Street money. They want certainty. They don't want this type of thing. And so they'll pay more for knowing what their numbers are going to be every year. And that all sounds good. But the real reason why we do this and put in the agreements is because there has been consistent legislative lobbying push from the energy sector that these should all be free. Because we're stopping oil, we're stopping, going to Saudi Arabia to get the oil, so in order to do that for our economic and sovereignty protection, we should just have solar be free and not have to worry about it. There have been bills that have been put in there, and they passed certain committees, they haven't made it all the way through, and they got to start over every 2 years. If one of those bills went through and was successful, then we wouldn't be able to tax them. But we have a legally binding contract for a tax payment structure. It's irrelevant to what the taxes are, because we've agreed this is what our business relationship is, that we can go to court and enforce that you will pay this amount every year, no matter what the state comes back and says, because we made this agreement that lasts for X number of years. So it's also our safety net, given the concerns from some of the lobbyists.
How much money do we bring in?
Today, $266,000. Of that, 100 goes into paying off the elementary school. So 166 is put into the system. But I anticipate that growing significantly more, and it was going to be such a big number that I'm concerned about this drop-off, that it'd be a big piece. And knowing that we have a window for a couple years here and what's in the pipeline, because I see it from the planning office, what's coming, that's why we needed this policy. Again, a small fish in the pond, not a big deal, but this is going to potentially get to a point where it's, I don't want to say double digit of our tax growth, but in the high single digits of, not our tax growth, but our tax levy.
Well, the
that becomes a big
battery
number.
storage project alone is expected to generate a big number.
Yes. Yep.
So, and then to have that, on a decreasing scale or somewhere on the other end.
Yep.
So you're right, the drop-off would be significant.
Yep.
Yeah, stick yours in the middle so you and Kate can.
Yeah, just a quick question on the
Dead. That one's
the
no good.
tax agreements and the split between the unfunded, the OPEB liability and the, I guess I don't know what a sinking capital stabilization fund is. Is that a separate stabilization
So
fund?
that's a fund that we would set up at this annual town meeting, and that would be dedicated to the, I didn't put that in here. That would be dedicated for the new middle high, I did put that in there, for the new middle high school. So in essence, John, since we know that that's going to be coming in 20, 25 years, and, today, this one cost us 48 million. If we built the new middle high school, it's, hundreds million plus, is that we have this, in essence, one-time money coming in for a certain number of years from solar. Let's take a third of that and start to put that into a sinking fund that we can use to pay that off, or to borrow less money, I guess is really what I'm trying to say, in the future.
But how is that different from the way we did police and fire by just putting it into the capital and debt stabilization fund for future development? I only say that by saying, I don't think we've ever really done this before by segregating a fund for a separate project. And what happens if, say, 10 years down the road, the middle high school needs a new roof? Does that money come out of the capital stabilization fund or come out of the sinking capital stabilization fund? We start commingling, is my concern.
No, all good questions. First of all, you're correct. This has never been done before in Carver. Secondly, and it shouldn't have been done before. And, you know, when the predecessor to the capital and debt stabilization fund we have set up right now, what John is talking to, is originally there was a building fund that was set up. And in that building fund, everything needed to be rebuilt. The middle high school needed new roof doors and windows. The police station, the fire station, everything needed to be rebuilt. And so money just went in there into the pot, knowing there was a whole bunch of things to be done. Well, since we went back and redid that program so it's capital and debt, we've ticked off every one of those big projects, including the elementary school, the middle high school, by putting up the new doors, windows, and a brand new roof that's guaranteed to last us for 20 years. So our next big project, short of Old Colony coming in for something, and giving where our debt capacity is and how we've got our capital and debt stabilization, we're not saving any more room for any significant borrowing until something comes offline. And so that's why, knowing that that is a project in the future, putting money aside specifically for that will require a 2/3 vote from town meeting to pull it out. So at some point, should some weird thing happen, and maybe it's a weird good thing that this money is set aside for the middle high school, and something happens, the money has to be used somewhere, well, at that point, you've raised the bar by making it 2/3 vote. You better be damn sure that there's a really good reason why that money has to not be used for that. Because town meeting has the right to always change its dedicated source, but by putting it in there, you've raised the bar from a simple majority vote by making it into that piece. But yes, it's different than what we've done before, because we've never been in a position where everything is funded and programmed, but for the new middle high school, which again is 20 years out. And it has to be 20 years out, because when we accepted, 19 now, when we accepted the MSBA money to redo and put a new roof on it, the new doors, new windows, and the new boilers, is that we had to guarantee that would be that we'd keep the building for 20 years. So it can't happen before then. Now, if we have, in our capital plan, we have other, significant repair items that need to be done. We need to update the locker room over at the middle high school and some other things like that. That would continue to come out of our capital and debt stabilization fund, which will continue to grow like it normally does.
Anyone else? I guess we're good.
I guess I have one more question, I'm sorry.
Go.
I hope the answer this is the first time.
So sorry, no. So I'm just thinking, we're dividing this into thirds. Could we, if we wanted to, put pieces away for that 20 years when we know we may have a shortfall to make up?
Put money away. Can we increase that thirds? Is that what you're saying?
Well, instead of doing a third, could we do a fourth? This is what I'm just thinking. Could we put aside money to make up?
Establish a fourth category?
Yeah. To put away money for when all these assets are fully done. Do you know what I mean? To make up anything and not levy the tax rate.
Sure. I think I understand your question this time.
Sorry.
No, I'm just teasing you. I would argue that we already have that. And I would argue that from the standpoint of our existing capital and debt stabilization plan. When you look at that long column that I have, the one that goes this way, and you look at the forecast of that, you start to see some debt coming offline. Mm-hmm. As that debt comes offline, the revenue continues to grow in that by 2.5% every year. And as debt comes offline, you get a bigger piece in here. So if you ever had to do some other projects in here, you can do those. Okay. Whether in cash or whether you reborrow some. So even when you extrapolate that out 20 years, is you're going to have a segment in there that you can do some additional borrowing for. Mm-hmm. And at that time, maybe you put a little bit of that money too into the middle high school, in addition to potentially a debt exclusion. And, my hope on this, and again, I can't run the numbers out this far because everybody say, well, you can't guarantee this, is the objective here would be to try to avoid a debt exclusion. Why not give it a try? I can't run the numbers and guarantee what it's going to be, but,
We're trying to kick the can as little down the road as we can.
Right. I'm trying not to kick the can down. Yeah.
That's what it boils down to.
Yeah. But I can't guarantee you it's not going to be a little can, but it's not going to be a big one.
Right.
I think using your analogy. Did I get it the first time?
This is a great idea.
All right.
So you
I think
thought
this
the other
is a
one the
great
first
idea.
time, I just was
I think
thinking
that is a great
something
idea.
else.
Okay, everybody good? All right. Thank you. At this time, we're going to take it off the table for reorganization. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Michael for the purpose of electing a chair.
You know, I might need a vote on that, because somebody said I couldn't do that for the redevelopment authority once, but I'll leave that alone.
Okay. I think we're safe.
All right, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, members of the Finance Committee, we have on the agenda here reorganization. So is there a motion, is there a recommendation, a motion for anyone or multiple people to be chairman? Do I have any motions? Does anybody want anyone to be a chairman?
I make a motion for Alan Germain to continue as chairman of the Finance Committee.
No second.
So we have a motion and a second. Are there any other motions of anyone else who would like to serve as chairman of the Finance Committee? Well, hearing none, is there any discussion on the motion for Alan Germain to be chairman of the Finance Committee? Yeah,
I just want to say that Alan has done a great job in his first year as chairman, and I'm looking forward to working with him, continuing as chair.
is there any other discussion? Well, then I'm going to move this to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously,
One abstention.
with one abstention.
I will abstain,
Excuse me, Mr. Germain, would you like the floor back?
if you don't mind.
All yours.
Thank you. I need a nomination for vice chair.
I nominate Kate for vice chair.
Second.
Any further nominations? Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of Kate Banzel remaining on as vice chair, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? One abstention? All set? Okay, thank you. And thank you. You did a great job also. So I look forward to the coming year. All right, the grant program. Let's roll right into this and get this dead horse put away here. I took the suggestions from the last meeting as well as an email that I received, and I put it all together into what we have in front of us. Just kind of broke it down into page content, so I think that works. Please tell me if anybody likes or dislikes or wants to change what we have. I did follow your suggestion, Beth, on the final page where we use the SMART,
Oh, yes, yep.
which I think was also Kevin's idea. Was it Kevin? I think it was Kevin's. No?
No.
Might have been Pat's. Pat's.
Yep.
So rather than include that in the application, I decided to throw this in here as the scoring sheet. I like the scoring idea a lot. I think that's a great idea. So that's why I put it down internal evaluation, so that the applicant will not get that. But the applicant will get the first 2 pages, which will then be made out into 4 pages as we produce the document. I just did it this way because it saves ink. Saves paper, actually. Was there anything in here on page 1, introduction, eligible organizations, types of projects, eligible, not eligible, and procedures that anyone likes, dislikes, or wants to change? I think, John, you had some ideas about when it started and ended. I think we put that in the bold print. And this would be the format I'm going to maintain, if you all agree with that. We'll keep the program dates in the bold print, and the must 501c3 corporation organization, leave that in bold also.
This looks really good.
On the second page, I gave them some room to list what they wanted to list. The third page being the actual application. And then the final page being the memorandum of agreement. Now, we changed this a little bit. I brought it into bullet points and cleaned it up. I did use the words our, I, we, which we had some changes to. Anybody? I'm sorry? Sure,
I noticed, I think the pages should be numbered.
okay.
And I think they all should have, for me, this is just my little thing, because I'm a secretary, I think they all should have the same heading. Every single page should have that heading, and then underneath would be like a subheading.
Do you have any idea what that's gonna do to the layout as soon as I try to stick the Town of Carver, Massachusetts grant program in on every page? Because you have no idea how much I had to,
Can you put a
had to
header
shift
and a
stuff.
footer?
I can, but it's gonna shrink.
Down, But I
Yeah.
think you could still just take out a couple of lines.
Okay.
I see areas that, but that's just my suggestion. Just 'cause,
I like the page number idea. 1 out of 2 isn't bad.
Well, actually, you could even just put that down at the bottom, you could,
In like little small print.
just in small print.
I could do
On
that.
every page, and then put the
Okay.
page number.
Let me write this down. Mary Ann said.
Do you want me to try to do it for you? I don't mind.
You can if you want. I have it all laid out already, so it's gonna be pretty simple. It's just a Word document.
Yeah, I don't mind. Send it to me.
I can send you the Word document.
Perfect, yeah. I'll have the page numbers.
Editable. Add page numbers, and I guess we don't need to do it on page 1, but on 2, 3, and 4. Say, I do want these to be separate pages,
Okay.
rather than, I don't want to have it on 2 sides. That screws everybody up. So we'll do page numbers and then a footer, but small. Oh, where do you get it? It'll drive you crazy. Because this was a lot of cut and paste.
I'm sure.
So that maintained it, and then when I tried to change it, as soon as I put a space in here, it moved the last one off the last page and created another whole page, and, oh, it was a killer. Because I'm not a word, I know how to type and stuff, but I don't know how to do, I don't know word processing.
Yeah.
I'm not, or I'd have a job doing that, so I don't know how anybody
Came out pretty good.
I
could.
think you
but-
did a really good job.
You did a
Very
really
good.
great job.
Really good job.
It was Stephen Cole who recently showed me how to do review. I never even knew there was a review function. Here I am crossing stuff out and highlighting it in yellow and putting new words in. Stephen says, why are you doing that? Just hit review. And then whenever you X out, gets X'd out, and the new words go in red. And isn't this easy? I said, I never even knew that was there.
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
Just that I'm thinking of, if, you're sitting there and you've got 4 applications in front of you, each one's 4 pages long, and you start going through them and looking at them, the only other concern I see is, what if page 2 from applicant 1 and page 4 from applicant 4, they get mixed in? If it comes apart, it's 4 pages,
Yeah.
there's a chance that they might get mixed up. So there should be somewhere that they write their organization name on every single page.
That's a good idea. Why don't we do it, if you can squeeze in a header and a footer and the header on each page,
Sure, with the extra.
The name.
that.
Applicant
Yeah.
name or something like that.
I think that's a great idea. I didn't think of that. George?
Yeah, on the memorandum, on behalf of the organization, I authorize the Finance Committee Chair, Carver Select Board Chair, et cetera, to inquire as to how the grant is helping Carver. We can do that anytime during
Yeah.
the grant period.
Yeah.
You just call up and make sure they're in front of
Yeah,
you.
well, that's if, this way here, I thought it was good if the town administrator had a question, or if the select board chairman had a question, then he could make the inquiry without having to wait till the next finance committee meeting to do that.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be in front of either the selectmen?
No, if they got a question, I mean, I can certainly remove the item, I don't have a problem with that. What's everybody else's thoughts on it?
No, I'm just wondering whether or not it has to be in front of a formal board or formal committee meeting that we're having like here. Or individually, you can go up and ask them.
I think this was designed, I think I threw that in there more because it was designed just to simply call up and say, just have a question. I don't think it was designed to do an audit. I think it was more of a, how's this program working for you guys? How are you doing with Carver? And let somebody just explain kind of quick, well, we did, X last month or something like that. I don't imagine anyone will take them up on it, but I had to put some additional authorizations in there. So I chose the Carver Select Board Chairman and I chose the Town Administrator as opposed to individual members of the Finance Committee calling up an applicant and saying, how you doing with this? And then you decide to call up and then somebody else decides to call up. So this kind of limited it to, we could act as a full board or if they had a question. Also, if we were planning on looking into it and Michael volunteered to give a call on our behalf, he can. So they know that when he does call, they can answer the question.
And then the other one on asking permission to spend funds on something other than what they put in their application. Should that be in writing, or are they just gonna make a phone call to you, or?
I think that should be in writing.
In front of the board, or what?
I think that should be in writing as a request to change. And then it would be up to this board if they want to accept that or invite them to come in and explain what they're trying to
So
do.
should we say written request
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
first? Just so that they know there's no misunderstanding, they're not gonna.
I will contact, okay. Can you add that in? I will contact TOC GP first by written request. Get the word written request in there if you're going to do the header and the footer for me.
Yes, absolutely. I'm
All
gonna-
right. I'll make sure that gets out to you tonight when I get home. I'll
Okay,
send that over to you. Actually, you may have it, because I sent it as a Word document in everybody's email.
okay, then I have.
So I think
it.
you've got
I'll
it.
just go right into it.
And it's not locked, so.
Do we want to put the town logo on here anywhere? We getting too crazy?
I'm going to
If
add a
you can
page.
fit it.
I don't know where you'd put it, but I suppose.
Maybe it could be a watermark.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's actually what I was thinking.
I'm actually
But I just don't
wondering,
have it. That's,
I'm actually wondering, after you look at it, I keep looking at this, flipping it, but I'm wondering if we did it in pages, if we want to have this be the cover page, the application be the second page, then this be the third page. So I think it would put
Yeah.
it more in a flow,
so the.
and then the memorandum be last. Does that make, I don't know why I didn't think of that earlier, which may mean all kinds of weird stuff's gonna happen when you try to
So-
move this around.
Okay, so what's the first page then?
First page is the cover,
Okay.
2,
One, hold on a
3.
sec.
and then I would say the application should be number
Here's
2.
This one, yeah. 2, okay.
And then review process number 3. And then the memorandum number 4.
Okay.
Alan, I have a question. Would it be unreasonable to ask that 100% of the funds get used to impact Carver residents? Do you have to build in that wiggle room to go to their general?
I agree with you. I don't think that that's unreasonable at all to ask. And I'm trying to remember why did we settle on, I know we started out at like 51%, we ended up at 75, but I'm not really sure why we ended up at 75.
I don't know.
I mean, why do we want to give 25% of the grant money to, another organization, another town, or another recipient?
Oh, you know why I think we did that is because we said we used Shane Gives Thanks as an example, that, we're pretty sure everyone is mainly from Carver, but we can't really assure that everybody
So it's a
that
little
walks through
wiggle room
that
built
door.
in.
You put a lot of
Yeah.
burden on the organization
Yeah.
to make sure that they grow.
That's
the
what I
person.
figured,
Yeah.
but,
I also
It
think,
was
That's
just
why
in
we did.
case it covers certain other
so that
towns.
doesn't make them ineligible if they happen to.
yeah.
And from the reports that we did get from the ones that received it in the past, from our town warrant, is that more than what they received in grant money went to the
Yeah,
citizens
it
of
did.
Carver. So it's not like there was.
I see. they're doing more in Carver than just
Right.
the $5,000.
I think the 75% number just lets them know that, you know, you're gonna come back before us and you're gonna tell us how the program went. So we need to, you're gonna need to show us that at least 75% of your money went to, I mean, we could require 100, but I think John's right. I
think
think
it
now
makes
they're
sense.
jumping through hoops, trying to make it work. And I think that there was one program, Women's Alliance for Legal Services or something like that, where they didn't have a tremendous amount of people that they served in Carver, but when they based it on what the going rate was for an attorney, the numbers all worked out, and they come out that they had saved the town, or that they had saved the residents something like $13,000 if they had had to go to a regular, you know, full-priced attorney, and this was for their free legal services, so.
Understood.
All right, so we're gonna do, this is page 1. This is page 2. This becomes 3. Good luck. You're gonna have a blast. You're gonna curse me tomorrow on page 4. And then page 5 is not gonna be page 5. Page 5, we're just gonna keep in our own packet
Exactly.
to use as a sheet, and we can fill in the name and so forth and so on. That's why I did put that up there, scoring 4. Okay, so this is gonna be the final, so once we vote on this tonight, I'm gonna have authorize Beth to make these changes, and then we're done. Is that gonna work for everybody?
Yeah.
I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to approve the grant program with the changes
As amended.
as submitted.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. While we're on that subject, let's go right over to this email that I have. Actually, it's not an email. It's a request from,
Health imperatives.
yeah, Health Imperatives. I don't have the actual email. Health Imperatives sent a question to Board of Selectmen, to Maureen Nissen, talking about a $6,000 grant that was given them last year. They were actually on the warrant last year, on Article 14, for $6,000, and the town gave it to them. And they asked, this was put in November, and they asked, you know, what happened this year? And no one really looked to see if it was even on the articles for this year. It was just forwarded to me. And when I looked it up, of course, it wasn't in the articles. So I don't know if they submitted a petition or what, but it doesn't matter at this point. We have enough money left over. We did provide them funding the previous year. We have a $5,000 limit now. I think it would be acceptable, once we've taken care of the people that were in the warrant, and there should be money left over, to offer them a grant application, let them come in and do the same process. Because that's it's open to everybody, not just those that were on the warrant. So we have $25,000. I believe we have $18,000 of it spoken for, because YPAC pulled out. So now we could submit, or I'll send them a grant application, let them fill it out. They'll understand it's a cap of $5,000. I imagine that would be their request. And this will proceed along as a normal grant application, which will kind of be a little different than what we're used to, because we've already committed to the ones that were in the warrant articles. So if everybody's okay with that, this gives you a quick idea of this is what she sent me for the health imperatives. Obviously, this is not gonna negate the need to have them come in and speak with us, but this gives you an overview of what's going on with that.
This is also a good example of the fact that the whole process really was to just not limit these requests, but just monitor them, make sure that they're,
That's right.
the money's being used correctly.
That's right. Because otherwise, if it had gone the other way, they could wait till next year. They'd never have any avenue to get this money this year.
But this will be a good test of, we just talked about the 75-25 rule, because there's so much on here with regards to services they provide. I don't know how they're gonna turn around and say, it was only spent on Carver residents, because it seems like it's anybody who needs help. I'm not sure how they're
But
gonna
it was
monitor
two
that.
hundred and thirty-nine individuals in the town of Carver, so, for medical care,
Yeah.
that is, prenatal care, that's eaten up right away.
I'm sure they still track it, at least if nothing else, with names and addresses. We don't need personal information, but they'll have an idea of how much of it came back.
This would be a
to
good
the-
test, let's see how it works.
It will be an excellent test.
Where are you looking?
Brockton.
It's an address on here.
They're located in Brockton.
Yeah, I mean, it's only $21 a person, right? 239,
Yeah, they're on West Chestnut Street in Brockton.
so that's.
I mean, I know we already approved this grant program application, but maybe we could change the wording. Instead of saying 75% of the total grant money, maybe you just say at least $5,000 of services directly impacting Carver residents, because they're never gonna be able to track that money coming in and being used for Carver residents. If they're taking 5 and giving back 10 to the town, it's a net positive, I mean, just an idea. I just don't know how you're gonna enforce, like you're saying, did they do it, But if they can say we provided services to 239 individuals, the total benefit amount was $25,000, we know it was a worthwhile.
I,
Or if it's overcomplicating it, just leave it, but I'm just.
well, I think that for this first year, we pretty much know everybody that's getting it. It's South Shore Community Action's $5,000. Obviously, that's gonna come to Carver. We know Shane Gives Thanks is gonna put all their money into Carver. These other organizations that had asked, I'm trying to track
There's a
down
history there.
information on, which I'm having a difficult time doing. But there's a history on them, and I think if we find out next year that this 75% number didn't work out, we can modify it. I think this is gonna wind up being a work in progress. I think there'll be things that we'll look at and say, we don't even need this to be in here anymore, but we need to add this. So that may be the way that goes. Just my opinion, but,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, like this one, if you look, if we give them $5,000, they have 239 patients in Carver. It's only $21 a person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure each person's more than $21.
Just curious. Social Community Action, 5,000. South Coastal Counties Legal Services for 4,000. If a free legal services and civil matters to low-income and elderly residents, I'm willing to bet money that how they base what they're giving away is.
They did give us some documentation.
Yeah,
It was like
and they're based,
their
that's,
billable hours
Yeah.
at $200 an
Yeah.
hour. And they helped, I think, 100 and something people.
right, South Shore Resource and Advocacy Center, formerly South Shore Women's Resource Center, is asking for 3,000. Provided to survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence for its residents. I'm willing to bet that they have a database of people that they've helped, and they can tell you that it's been X number of people in the town. In fact, I think one of these broke it down, trying to remember which one it was, but broke it down by gender, by,
Sure.
yeah, they did all kinds of stuff,
I
so.
think it was the social
And then the
action.
other 6,000 is for Shane, so I think that's gonna be fine. Okay.
Are they only using the funds for sexual assault
I think it said domestic violence.
and domestic violence?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's only those two, it's not everything else they list up front?
What do you mean?
Well,
Who
they've
is,
got
oh, I'm
one
sorry, maybe I
paragraph
don't
here.
understand the question, is who
No,
using?
I'm just asking, on the back of the front page from the memorandum, from the email, there's an article, I guess this was the article they wanted to put in the warrant. They were only using the 6,000 for sexual assault and domestic violence for the town of Carver. And on the front page, they've got it broken down to an awful lot of other things.
But I think their
Quite an
primary,
quite
I
an
think the
organization.
primary fix is,
Well, they're saying they do health and safety needs of low income and.
yeah, but they do
vulnerable
24-hour sexual assault, domestic violence hotline in Plymouth County. I think that's their focus. And then anything else that comes after that, when you start getting into the diseases and hepatitis and all that, is probably a result of the sexual assault or a result of the domestic violence. So I think it would cover, I think that's their focus, and then everything else is the resulting bad stuff that happens after the fact, which is still part of this whole thing.
I know this is offline. I'd love to see their overall budget. Because they seem to have so much stuff packed in here, $6,000 and
Yeah, it's a drop in the
$29
bucket.
a person that covered in Carver doesn't go a whole long way. So they must have a huge budget.
It's probably a lot of donations.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
and that's just being nosy on my part, because it must be quite an organization.
Says they've been providing these services for more than 40 years, and they're 25,000 families and individuals.
Yep.
So I'm sure they partner even up with some of the hospitals and stuff.
And they said they work with hospitals.
Sure.
Oh, it must be something, quite an organization, quite large.
I know I support, I donate to one in Quincy called Dove, and the money goes there. Like, you can,
I can't even imagine how
yeah,
fast
give
it goes.
yeah, you can give like $250, and that just covers linens and bedding for a
Oh,
family.
yeah, yeah, crazy.
So it goes quick.
Okay, that was the discussion with the Article 30. I did that also. I was trying to figure out my own note here. So I had run down that. So that, when you're finished with that, send the finished product back to me, and then I'll get these applications out with a nice cover letter
Sure, absolutely. I'll get
to
right
all of
on it.
these organizations so that they can begin their application. I really want to see Shane Gives Thanks get going on this so that they can, hopefully we can have this wrapped up for them and they can have a check the end of July or something like that.
I'll try to get it back to you tomorrow.
So we're not going to deal with it on the 27th, because that's a night with Steve Pratt, but the July meeting, we can deal with it, and you know, hopefully, if we get the application right out, then we can maybe have Shane come in on the July meeting, so deal with that. Mission statement, Kate worked on this. The only thing, I think it came out great. The only thing I would like to see, did you get it, John?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. The only thing that I thought was, in the second paragraph, to remove the word long or short term, just take it right out, which may have a fiscal impact. But I'm open to anybody else's idea. You're very quiet over there tonight.
I'm just a quiet guy. But every once in a while, I'll have something to say.
Sorry, did you say take out the short and long term?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that would, any matter which may have a
Or just
An impact.
fiscal impact to the town. What do you think?
Sure.
Other than that, I think it looks great.
Okay.
Maybe we should just add, after including the town's budgets, and say, and warrant articles?
Where are you? Including the town's budget and
second.
warrant articles?
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't that kind of say that in the last line of the second paragraph?
Last line, the second paragraph?
Yeah, the committee provides factual and relevant information to the residents so they can make informed decisions at town meeting.
But I think it actually
Same thing about the town budget, though, too.
Okay,
I mean, really, the town meeting is really two items, the budget and warrant articles.
okay, so including the town budget and warrant articles, is that what you're saying? Can you make that change, Kate?
Mm-hmm. You can make those changes.
Okay, and warrant articles. Anything else? Anybody want to add to it?
Should it say like up the top, where it says matters that are subject of or relate to, should we say relative to?
Mission is to consider and review all matters that are subject to, of, or
Not sure.
relate to, or relative to. I
Yeah,
think
that's
you're
what
right, I
meant.
think the
It's supposed
relative
to be
is the word, yeah, I think so.
I'm not sure.
Anybody else? Mary Ann?
Another town had relate to. I kind of pulled from a whole bunch of
Oh, okay.
towns.
Leave it the way it is then.
I think the last sentence of the first paragraph strives to assure. I think that word might need to be ensure rather than assure, but
Case tries to, yeah, I believe you're right.
I think assure means
Ensure.
like provide reassurance,
Right.
positive.
I like insure, which is probably exactly what you said.
No, I was saying EN, ensure.
I think it's a
Inshore would be
supplemental drink
too.
for old people.
I do too, I do too.
What was that?
And sure, I give it to my patients. It's a supplemental drink I give to patients. That's why I'm like,
How about guarantee?
Starting to look-
Buy 'em all the time.
What do you think, John?
Sure is fine, based on the definition I'm reading.
Okay,
Tell someone something positively or confidentially to dispel any doubts they may have.
there you go.
Make something certain to happen.
There you go. Assure stays.
all right.
No old people drink.
Be drinking all night.
Anything else? I'll take a motion. You can make a motion.
I make a motion to approve the mission statement with the changes as submitted.
I second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
The one thing I did notice as I was looking at other towns, on our finance committee page, website, when we put the mission statement, we should also put the financial management policies, so it's all right there
I like
together.
that.
Makes sense.
Okay. That's a great idea.
I looked at a lot of different towns' pages.
It's a great idea. Thank you. All right, let's take a peek at the minutes from May 9th. Mr. Carter will be abstaining from the vote. I sent these to you guys also. Did you have a chance to read them before this minute?
Yes, I read it.
I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for May 9th as written.
Okay.
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes for May 9th as written. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And one abstention. Sorry. There's more coming, though, on the next set of minutes. Sorry, Kate. And Kevin. I'll take a motion on the minutes for May 23rd.
Make a motion to approve the minutes for May 23rd.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes for May 23rd. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And two exemptions, two abstentions, excuse me, exemptions. Yeah, good. Abstentions. Okay, we'll get those put up on the website. We have no topics tonight. Actually, we do, well, we don't. We don't. We have, I'm doing it under comments. We have business?
No, I just wanted to, Old Colony, as I said to Mr. Malinowski earlier.
Oh, okay, we'll do this under committee member comments.
Yeah, that's what we're at.
Okay.
So, Old Colony is in the process of working with the MSBA. They're looking to do a building project of building a new building. Theirs is not large enough for everything they want to do.
You want to do an addition, right?
No.
Oh, brand new building?
So, I don't know the exact numbers, but it looks like they're looking at a building that's gonna be about $105 million. MSBA do about 48%, so between the 5 towns, you know, we're looking about 10 million.
You think
Possibly.
that's all it's gonna cost, 100 something?
That's
much
what they're
is it?
saying right now,
How much did you
Whoa.
say, 108 million?
somewhere around there.
Middleborough's building a brand-new school was 112, but Sharon's building a brand-new high school for 160.
I thought Sharon's was higher than that when they came.
No, I think it said 160. Sharon's end of it is like 100 million.
MSBA will cover.
Okay.
How does that get,
I'm just,
I was just thinking, I think that has to go to multiple towns, right?
Yes,
You-
it
Every
you-
town.
You can't turn around and tell a town that your share is
Yeah,
this.
you-
No,
$10 million.
no, every town is going.
Have a vote.
Yes, every town meeting is going to have to
That's
vote,
gonna
and
be-
the charter is that every town has to agree.
I don't think it's a town meeting, though. I think it has to be a town-wide
Town.
vote, not town meeting vote. Has to be like almost like a debt exclusion to a certain point.
I'm not sure
well, how are you
exactly.
gonna pay for it? How's the town of Carver gonna pay $10
That's what I'm
million?
saying.
I'm not sure exactly. This is stuff I'm hearing, you know, so it's been out there that they want to do this. Some numbers are coming back. So they just had their accreditation, and I was actually part of the parent council for that. So we were talking about,
And how many students do we have there again?
right now,
we have about 100
93 that go to that school
Okay.
same type
This year.
of vote type.
this year.
And it's, our end is like
That's why I said 100
1,000,002,
seemed really low.
1,000,003.
Okay,
Just about 13,000 a kid.
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I just don't know if a town, because a town meeting could say, this year, yeah, I'm gonna pay my share, but next year, I don't wanna pay all that money. You can't do that. You have to have a dedicated source of funds. So I've never
So maybe
seen.
I don't know exactly
know how
how they
that
do it.
works.
I don't know that part.
I know who does, though.
I just know some figures that
Sure.
have kind of come out, and I just wanted to kind of get that out there on the record, so that, you know, we can,
What's the timeframe that they're saying? They're saying the next few years, or?
yeah, a few years, so.
Well, okay.
And I know that all 5 towns do have to agree.
Yeah, we had a problem with one town agreeing.
And then we had people that didn't agree with the one town's agreement.
But they're going through something like this down the Cape right now, and the towns are fighting over who's gonna do what. One town said, no, we're not paying, and the school's on a hold virtually.
Well, you've got a couple of towns in this whole thing that, I mean, you look at Marion doesn't have that many kids going to that school at all.
Well, Marion's
Get all
not
the
part of
money.
the district.
Well, there's one of the towns that's.
Mattapoisett.
I'm sorry, I confused those two. But it's disproportionate, so. Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's gonna be an interesting fight, no matter how.
It's gonna be a fight.
You into that?
What's that, John?
You ever into that, from a school building program?
I'm sorry.
Have you, in your prior post as the school business manager, have you ever ran into that situation where you had to do a funding for a capital project that involved multiple towns?
not for multiple towns. I did it before the new regulations for school, like when we did added the middle school up at the high school. We did that one, and it was involved in finishing off a project up in Marshfield for, not the new high school, but a previous one. But when you look at, I think, a regional Voc school, which Old Colony is probably the smallest Voc school in the state, but it's still, when you build a Voc school, it's very expensive to outfit it with all the different
Equipment for,
aspects going on in there. Very, very expensive to outfit it. But I think when you look at that, it would probably go along the lines of they're gonna get some school building assistance, and maybe it's close to 50%, and the other 50% would probably be on a 20 or 30-year bond, which would then, I'm assuming, would go on to the assessments for, it would be an increased assessment to each of the member communities. That's how I think that would work.
So there'd be would break down into almost a cost per student. And
Yeah.
this piece of the cost would be for the bond.
Ratioed somehow, yeah.
But what if you
according to
had
enrollment.
50% of your students didn't go there the following year or something like that?
I think once you're in, you're
Then
in.
you're still in for that percentage,
I
that,
don't know how
would
it
imagine.
works out in the future, because things change every year. You're gonna have different percentages, probably small percentage differences from year to year as to the member communities.
right.
I think, did Hanson just do, I shouldn't say just do, but like 5-10 years ago, I thought they did a new regional school.
I don't know how they did it.
Interesting.
Okay.
I'm just looking at their,
So thanks for scaring the hell out of us
I was
tonight.
gonna say, it's expensive. You got
Appreciate
900
that.
students, roughly $10 million, it's $100,000 per student.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
but you gotta think too, that that building has been there since the 70s.
It's
So,
never been, I was under the impression after talking with Adam, after the finance meeting that we went to, that they were looking to add on to that school, to add a couple of shops and enlarge the school footprint. I wasn't aware they were talking about demolishing and building brand new.
so that's what I've
It's
been,
a far cry from, the $10 million to add on to the school as opposed to, tear it down and build a brand new one for $150 million. And you're right, by the time you outfit those shops and so forth and so on, even using what you've got now, by the time it gets done and you bring in some more modern equipment, knowing my youngest went there, I want to say that they had gotten approval to spend, it was like $150,000 just to outfit the machine shop. They were buying a couple of lathes and one CNC machine, and that was the end of that money.
Do you know how many students there are, Kate?
In the whole school?
like 450, somewhere around there. So,
We had 92 last year. This year we had 93.
I know that the incoming freshman class is over 100, so they are increasing the size, so.
From Carver? Well, the incoming
No,
freshman
the-
cast,
Freshman class all around.
townwide.
So there probably are some more students from Carver, so. And from the town warrant, because we did vote on that on the updated charter, so there is the capital cost and debt.
This is the magnifying glass.
So,
Capital cost shall be apportioned to each member town annually for the, I think, okay. Each member town's share of 90% of the capital cost of each fiscal year shall be determined by computing the ratio. So I'll have to let them work it out and see how they come out. But I still would assume that somewhere in this picture, it's gotta go to a town, I'd imagine a town vote.
Yep.
If there's gonna be any kind of an exclusion or something.
It's got to be guaranteed money.
That's what I would think. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
To make that phone call tomorrow. Kate scared the hell out of us at the meeting last night. What's going on?
I am just, there's a lot of talk about it with the Old Colony School Committee, and, you know, I think the towns, you know, need to know about it and be prepared, and, you know, some towns in that district are better off than others,
There's no doubt,
so.
no doubt. Anyone else on committee member comments?
On the homepage or the webpage, is the grant application program on there, or should we put that on there too?
Not yet, but there's no reason why it couldn't be. Actually, there's no reason why we couldn't put it on there as a PDF and have them click on it.
Fillable PDF would be good.
Right.
They could just enter all the data right there.
Yeah,
Yeah, you go through, and that gives everybody time, ample time to look at it.
that's actually a great idea. We're having a little bit of a problem with the webpage as far as who's really well-versed in how to get to it and do stuff on it. So I'm trying to,
Yeah, but I'm sure these organizations that are looking for money will have somebody on their staff that knows exactly where to go.
no, from our end, on the town of Carver end, we're trying to find, it's not the IT department, and there was a crash course given to a couple of the girls in the selectman's office, and I know that Cara Dayhill's trying to learn it, and we lost you, and then we were able to put Steve Pratt on, and then we couldn't put you back. You were there, you were in the system, but we could not put you back in.
Not sensitive.
And then, I guess whoever it was finally, poor Carrie was on the phone with technical assistance or something like, and they walked her through it. And it was one of those dumb things where, you know, you click on this and click on this, and oh yeah, there you are, you pop right up. But the website is so not intuitive. When you log in and you try to do stuff, it's written like you're Steve Jobs. Unless you are, you don't have a clue. I mean, it doesn't make sense. You know how a lot of the websites you can get into and like an Apple iPhone is kind of intuitive? The Carver website is anything but intuitive. You know, I happen to tie an agenda into a meeting one time, and when you tie the agenda in, there's a line where you put in the finance committee meeting to link it to. And the menu drops down this far, and the oldest one was like 2015. I couldn't get here, no matter what I tried to do. And there is no place that, you know, you scroll through a drop-down menu. Doesn't scroll through nothing. It goes this far and that's it. And then we got to a place where we couldn't add additional spots for members on the finance committee. There were 7, and that was it. How do we add another box? No idea. They finally did it, but I still don't know how. So, but that's a great idea, to stick it on the webpage as a fillable PDF. I like that.
Did you want to talk about the fees?
Yeah, we can.
Do you have that?
I do. You know how we all sat here and voted to go ahead
Kevin
and...
and Adam weren't part of that group then?
Yeah, actually, you weren't. A year ago, 8 months ago, about right, we voted to recommend that the MLC fee be increased from $25 to $50 because it was costing more than $25 to produce the document. And that ended up in front of the select board, town meeting that approved it, and the select board that approved, that was supposed to, they could regulate the fees. Well, I just pull down the fees?
We had to adopt Mass General Law, I forget exactly which one.
Yeah.
But we had to adopt a certain Mass General Law to be able to raise this fee, this one fee. We did bring up that, I actually personally brought it up, that I was concerned that all of a sudden we're gonna raise all of the fees in town.
We did.
And there's proposals to raise basically every fee in town.
I don't know if this is a proposal. I believe this is the new fees.
Well, it said proposed on it.
Public notice. So I'll pass this around. So it's also on the website, but it looks to me like they're trying to raise every single fee there is in the town, and I'm not sure that that's the greatest idea on the face of the planet. This is kind of printed out weird. That's how it came off the website.
If I remember too, I think it's a similar warrant, or a similar article was presented at the town meeting in 2018 as well, and it was voted down, because I spoke to it at the time, because I was concerned about this. And the specific reference I made was to things like Conservation Commission fees and building fees and this sort of
And-
stuff, because it can become very prohibitive, giving unilateral control over things like that to individual boards and committees. So, given the late hour and everything at this year's meeting, I sat down and there was overwhelming support for the article as written, and this was the concern I had when it was voted on.
And that was my concern when it was brought to the Finance Committee. But we were told, no, it was just for this one.
Just MLC certificates, yep.
Yeah, which that made sense, and, if we could do that, that made sense. But now it's, as Kevin is going through.
Well, it needs to
Where
be
did that come
important. It was passed, and the wording is,
the
no
town.
fee shall be imposed or increased until a public hearing. So, the selectmen's meeting, let me look and find out when the meeting is.
Yeah, they stressed that it couldn't be done without people being notified.
Yeah.
Notified, and the
But
select
it's
board
still
had to
grant,
approve.
it still granted them the authority to make the change, even if they had held a public hearing and 50 people were here to say no, they could still approve it if they wanted.
They could. And I thought it should have actually been in conjunction with the Finance Committee, but I was overruled.
So who's asking the select board to pass this?
This is their own.
Like, is it
You
come from the
just look and
clerk's
see if
office?
it's on there. Executive session budget swearing presentation, select board update. Fee increases as proposed is on for 8 o'clock this coming Tuesday night. I would like it very much if some members here could make it a point to
I
go to that
am working and
selectmen's.
unavailable.
I have a ZBA board meeting downstairs. Can you make it, George?
I think so.
John? Beth?
I think
Adam?
so, I'm looking right now.
MA, Tuesday?
Tuesday?
Yeah.
Tuesday, the 18th.
I've got something, but I think it's earlier in the night.
I'll make it, 8 o'clock.
Okay. I'd like to get some more information on this. Like I said, I'm downstairs and I won't be able to, but this was not our intent, and I think that needs to be brought, I'd like very much for that to be expressed to the Board of Selectmen, that this was not the Finance Committee's intent to approve that MLC fee increase, to give you guys carte blanche over doing exactly this, because this was a concern. In fact, let me look up the minutes of the meeting that we had dealing with this.
Okay.
Because I think your comments are in that, why not? Happen to have the minutes right here.
I think the MLC certificate stuck out because of all the work that's involved
Right,
reducing
so
it.
I almost feel like
So if they're gonna raise
it
a
was,
fee in every line item, every service, they have to defend it by saying why, what additional work is required.
Well, I know we kicked the can, because the first time, Kate made a motion to table,
Right.
and it was voted and passed. The second time, November 27th, John made a motion to continue, seconded by Kate.
and we didn't make the decision to support this lightly because of the concern.
No, we didn't. So I would very much like to have it be made known. There's nothing we can do about it if they vote to do it, but I'd like it on the record that, this wasn't what we had intended. when Laurie Hinault came before us and said, you know, we need to raise the MLC fee because it's costing us more than $25 to produce that fee.
Is there a list that says what the old fee and the new fee?
Yes,
Yeah,
it
it's
is.
right here.
Hold on, I'll
And it's on the Carver website. I happened to grab it and printed it. But it's extensive. Yeah, it's kind of confusing the way it got printed out, but that's the way it printed off the site.
Try to say I haven't seen anything on,
One person posted about it on Facebook.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
It was something in reply to something I
Yeah.
had put out there. I love it. Well, since it's coming down to posting on Facebook, I have a copy of the lawsuit from both sides of the fence, and the only comment I'm gonna make about this tonight is, and I'm gonna put this out on Facebook, out on social media, and it really concerns the last 2 pages of this reply. I'm just going to read it very quickly. The first one is from Mr. Humes, who's the architect. Total architectural fee for this project is $450,000. To date, they've spent $135,000 with a balance to finish equaling $315,000. The town of Carver has paid all invoicing to date. Our drawing process since May 15th is anticipated by June 15th invoice to be $45,000. So that means that as of June 15th, the architectural drawings and that will be roughly $180,000. Mr. Humes is saying that we fail at this lawsuit, if we lose, that we're going to throw away all of it except the value of the completed programming, which is 10 grand. So we're going to throw $170,000 in the trash bucket. It goes on, this one comes from Adelis, who is the project manager, the construction company. And they're saying that if this is going to cost roughly $30,400 per month to delay this project. So this is only to let you guys know that if this is delayed, and they're looking at a 1-year delay, if this prevails and so forth and so on, and this gets delayed up to a year, the additional cost of just the delay will be $484,800 on a $7.3 million project, roughly 5% per annual. So $30,000 a month plus the $170,000 in architectural costs goes down the toilet. So that's just where we're at with this. I have also requested that we have a full accounting on the legal costs. This document here is what KP Law provided for court, so you know that didn't come cheap.
They went this week, didn't they?
They went Wednesday. So Michael thinks that we've spent probably $10,000 to $12,000 in legal costs just since we got the notice of the hearing and through the appearance. So I know that everybody's kicking and screaming on Facebook how everybody has the right to sue. You absolutely have. There's no doubt about that. But that all comes at a cost. And my only argument has been is this was approved and passed and beaten to death and then passed unanimously at town, not unanimous, but by the vast majority at town meeting. And now we're back here again, being backed into a corner, forced to argue a lawsuit. Which, no matter how you cut this, it's like everything. Whether you win or lose, you lose, because the moment you have to hire a lawyer, you're not where you were when you started. So that's my argument. I want everybody in the town to be fully aware of what this involves and what this is costing for whatever the end result comes out to be. But this is taxpayer money. We jumped through hoops to save a teacher for $41,000 last year, And that is gonna be a drop in the bucket compared to what's going on here. So there'll be more updates coming. I've let the selectmen know, the chairman of the selectmen, and I've let the town administrator know that I plan on keeping the town of Carver updated via social media on where we're at, and I'm waiting for that first batch of numbers. If he has no objection, if the chairman of the select board has no objection, I'll use these numbers that are in this affidavit, and that's my starting point. And that was one of the questions I asked, is how much have we spent so far to date, and how much of that money is recoverable for the next project, if we have to go to a Plan B? And here's your answer. $10,000 out of, for the programming of the thing, and the rest of it we throw in the trash. You can't use the drawing, because it won't fit. There's where else you're gonna put the property, you know, unless you're gonna, now I heard some talk about, they're looking at, I guess Sedell's is for sale. But, you know, where's that money gonna come from? So, we'll see.
What's the next step after yesterday's?
Waiting for the
Okay.
judge. I was there.
Judge just makes a ruling?
I went, and the judge took it under advisement. So that means that, you know, 2 weeks to a month, we could get a opinion or a ruling. I don't know whether that's good or bad, or what the speculation is on it, but, you know, I'm not the judge, and I do have to pat Greg Corbo on the back. I think he did a fabulous job in court. I really do. I think we got a really, really well put-together document. This is on the website. This 78 pages is on the Carver website, and I think this I got off of Facebook. But this is the filing from the plaintiffs, so it's there. I'm not sure it's bathroom reading. I think there's a little too much of it. But that's all I got.
If the judge comes down, they can appeal too, right? So they just tie
Sure.
it up longer?
Sure.
Any way we look at it?
I put that out tonight. And honestly, if they are denied the injunction, they have the right to appeal. If the injunction is approved, we have the right to appeal. So this becomes, you know, who's gonna stop, who sings uncle, who says no, who, whatever. And they have absolutely that right. They have every right to do what they're doing, because we have a constitutional right to sue. I have a difference of opinion on a couple of the officials that are filing that lawsuit, but that's a personal observation in my opinion only, so I won't bring it up here. But it's all over Facebook, so that's where I'm at. Anyone else? Our next meeting will be the 27th, at 7 PM. Bring popcorn. I might just get pizza that night. I'd like you very much, very, very much, I'd like you to be there, and I'm not gonna tell you why. I would just like you to be there.
I wouldn't miss my last meeting.
I appreciate that. Could have a big cake with, you know, you never know what's gonna pop out.
Great.
Maybe I'll get pizza. Maybe we'll do pizza that night or something like that. Everybody like pizza? Maybe we'll do pizza for that. It's gonna be a very, bring a notepad, it's gonna be a really involved evening. Steve Pratt is gonna, as soon as I'm done with the Pledge of Allegiance, and thank you, Area 58, and I'll do the minutes right away, and then the evening is Steve's. So I come back into the picture to say goodnight. That's about it. But the rest of the evening is his, and he's got a whole batch of information that I think that we'll walk away looking at it saying, wow, he's got a tremendous amount of information. I'm sorry?
We'll get a crash course on the history of
Oh, yeah.
town.
And I don't think you can go forward looking until you know what was in the past. We've tried a lot of things that he's gonna bring up. And so I think that's very important for going forward. It's very hard to fix something if you didn't know it was, you know, we tried to fix it before and that didn't work. Why bother trying again? So I think history is real important in this.
It was very eye-opening when he did it on the town building committee. They did a lot of analysis of what happened 5, 10 years ago and town expenses, how they grew and everything else. So back then, it was very educational for the finance committee.
A lot of what Steve said, this is a lot of the reason why, and I'm going to give him credit because I had heard about this before, this is a lot of the reason why this financial management policy changed, for them taking those 3 categories. Because he brought that to everyone's attention and said, look, this is what's going on here. This is decreasing. And he's right, once the personal property tax goes into the levy, it stays in the levy. So if that goes down, then money's got to come from somewhere else.
The old terminology used to be a backdoor override, is what they used to call it, because the funding would start coming down, but your assessments could stay the same, go up 2.5%.
Yeah. And once it's in there, it's in there.
Yep.
So, and we get a tremendous amount of money in this town from personal property tax. It's a lot of towns, apparently, according to Steve, a lot of towns, it's a nothing. In Carver, it's a sizable percentage of our revenue. So it's not something we can just look at and say, yeah, that's nothing. So that was, I think, where a lot of the suggestion came, to allocate so that we wouldn't be caught on the other end. So it's going to be a very, very informative night. So that's the 27th at 7 p.m. An email will obviously go out to everybody if you have a preference. I think I will get pizza that night. I'll provide pizza to the group. Maybe some cupcakes for John. And,
No tears.
I got to tell you the truth. I'm very sad. That you're stepping down. I know you're happy about it, but 12 years is a long time. My hat's off. You deserve that.
Enjoyed every minute of it.
You definitely deserve that citation from the state.
Thank you.
You did. I still get mail that still says John Carter, Chairman, Carver Finance Committee.
It takes a while for that to change.
I can't find a place to change it. I said, I'll just leave them on it. We'll keep them on it. We'll put them up there near the plaque. All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn?
Second?
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good night.